Hello, welcome back to another episode of 52 Movies, a series on my channel where I watch and review a movie every week. For episode 12, we are going to be talking about the Valley Girl remake that was released last year. Valley Girl is a movie about a valley girl who falls for someone outside of the valley. It's a typical love story about two people who are from two different worlds and fall in love. And the people in their lives don't necessarily agree with it. Think Romeo and Juliet, The Little Mermaid, Twilight even. So a very stereotypical love story about star-crossed lovers. So yeah, with that description, you probably know how this is going to go. They fall in love despite their differences. They have some trials. They're not sure if they're going to make it, but by the end of the story, they are happily in love. One thing that's a little different about the story is that it is told from the perspective of a mom telling her daughter about her life as a teenager in the 80s. And I kind of like that aspect. It made it a little more original. So I thought that was really cool. So that's the plot. Let's do a little bit of trivia before we head into my thoughts on the movie. When I was writing the script, I wrote that we went through a period where we were all obsessed with everything 80s. I felt like that was more of a 2018 sort of thing, so I was kind of confused that this movie came out in 2020. But this was before I learned that the original release was actually supposed to be in 2018. Like I mentioned, this movie was supposed to be released in 2018, but it was pushed back because one of the stars of this movie is Logan Paul. And if you remember, in 2018, he was in a controversy over the Suicide Forest incident. If you don't know, you can look that up. I don't want to really describe anything here. It was just kind of an awful situation. Okay, so now let's talk about my thoughts on the film. I'm going to do this in a numbered list. So number 1, how the musical feels. This musical feels very awkward, and the reason for this is mainly how every musical number starts. Every musical number in this movie starts very abrupt, very all of a sudden, like there's no real lead up to it, no indication that the character is going to break out in song, they just do. And a lot of the numbers start a cappella, so there's no building of music in the background to indicate that a song is about to start. At least not that I could hear. I watched it on my TV, so there may have been something I just didn't hear. I feel like some musicals can kind of get away with this, but it's tricky. If you think of the Broadway style of musical that Disney uses a lot for their movies, especially during the Disney Renaissance in the 90s, most of the time emotion rises and you hear music start playing in the background. So this helps things seem a little more natural. Of course, breaking into song is not natural, but it helps the transition appear more seamless. A good example of this would be Disney's Mulan. In the musical number Reflection, Mulan is walking through the gates and she's visibly emotional, and you can hear Reflection start playing in the background. This would definitely make it feel more natural than for Mulan to just start singing a cappella. Even though she was emotional, it wouldn't have the same seamlessness to it. So my problem with Valley Girl and their musical numbers is that they just don't seem natural. They feel very forced and awkward. It seems like Valley Girl is in limbo between wanting to be a musical and a normal movie. This causes the whole movie to feel like it's not confident in itself, like it doesn't sell itself, if that makes sense. And that's one of the gripes I have about Valley Girl. Number 2. We're going to talk about the difference between a jukebox musical and a traditional musical. Valley Girl is a jukebox musical. A jukebox musical is a musical in which all of the songs, or most of the songs, are not written specifically for the movie. Traditional musicals will have original songs written for the musical. Sometimes jukebox musicals are biographical, like Jersey Boys or the Elton John musical, things like that. They're about the lives of the musicians, and then all of the music will be the music from that specific musician. Jukebox musicals aren't necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's one of the trickier ones to pull off. For one, it makes the numbers seem less genuine. When you have songs that are original, the audience has never heard them before. Therefore, there are no previous feelings that the audience can infer onto them. Also, when the songs are original, it feels like it comes from the heart of the character and not something they heard on the radio and just start singing all karaoke-like. In the universe of Valley Girl, the songs that they are singing are all original. Even though in our world they are popular songs from the 80s, at least that's what the movie made me believe. The main reason I think this is because the guy that Julie falls for wrote Melt With You for Julie, but that's not true in our universe because, for one, Modern English is a British band, so therefore they wouldn't be from Hollywood, you know? Alright, number 3, we're going to talk about the two types of musicals. One is aware and the other one is unaware. I don't know if those are the right terms to use for what I'm about to talk about, but it's kind of what I've been calling them. So an aware musical is where the characters are aware that they are singing songs, and unaware is where people don't. So the main boy love interest is in a band, and so sometimes they'll be playing a concert, but it is also part of the musical. So that song is pertaining to the scene that they're in and stuff like that. So it's still part of the musical, but they're also playing a concert. So that's more of an aware instance. Number 4, the song choices. Sometimes the songs that they use don't feel quite right. They either don't fit the mood very well or the lyrics don't really fit the situation. Number 5, vocals. So I may praise other movies for doing things that I'm going to criticize this movie for, and one of those things is the vocals. Most of the time it is a breath of fresh air whenever a musical uses vocals that aren't quite perfect. A lot of the problems that some musicals have is the overproduction of vocals to the point where you don't hear any emotion or personality in them. This movie is quite the opposite. I felt like it needed a little more work with the vocals. A lot of the times the vocals were very shaky. It sounded like they were doing it live, but you could tell that they weren't. So I don't know what the point was there. It could have been live. They could have been singing live in the moment, but it did not look that way. And yeah, I just think the vocals could have used a little more work. Not to say that every performance should have been perfect, but that it probably shouldn't have been that shaky. And it wasn't even vibrato, it was just shaky. It just felt off. Number 6, insta-love. Do I really even need to say anything about this? The love at first sight and insta-love tropes are so overdone at this point, and I just didn't need to see them again. Number 7, some funny or weird scenes. So one scene that I'm going to mention and probably include here if I can was the very obvious Logan Paul stunt double. They did this thing where they blurred his face completely. So a lot of the times with stunt doubles, they will avoid showing the faces because that could kind of give things away. Unless the stunt double is very, very much a look-alike, you know? So in this instance, they shown his face, but it was very blurred, and you could tell it wasn't him. Another kind of joke or weird moment was when the daughter made a cell phone joke or fourth wall break. It was very weird. Number 8. Some good things about the movie. So the first good thing about the movie was that there was a plus-sized main character, but her weight was not even mentioned once, I don't think. She wasn't the funny girl, she wasn't the butt of every joke, and losing weight was not her character's goal. That is just so refreshing. Plus-size girls should exist in movies without their weight being mentioned every other minute, because in real life, plus-size women exist and they live their lives like normal people. And the last good thing I want to talk about in this movie is the mother-daughter relationship. In the beginning, like I mentioned, there is a rebellious teen daughter, and her mother is telling her a story about when she was a rebellious teen. And I like the way the mother kind of handled the situation. The daughter was essentially caught lying to her. She said she was going to be at the movie, and then she ended up being at a club and had her pick her up at that club. So while she was mad and discouraged this behavior, she also made the daughter feel like this was just a normal part of growing up. And she talked about how when she was younger, she kind of defied her mother as well. So I really appreciate this approach to disobedience. I just thought it was really sweet. Sometimes parents don't try to understand their children, like they don't put themselves in their shoes, and I felt like this mom kind of did that. She put herself in her daughter's shoes and tried to remember how she felt as a young teen. I really liked that aspect. I thought that was cool. So in conclusion, this movie was just okay. There were some things I wished that this movie improved upon, but it is what it is. I just wish it was better because we really haven't gotten a good movie musical in a very long time. When I saw the trailers for this movie last year, I was really, really excited. I knew I was going to love this movie. I had planned to go to the drive-in to see it because it was 2020, so it was still pandemic time. But I had planned to go see this in the drive-in, but that plan didn't pan out. And then I had planned to actually buy it, but I kind of waited around and I wasn't sure if I really wanted to buy it because I had never seen it. But I knew I would love it because of my love for musicals and because of how fun the 80s were. I'm kind of glad I didn't buy it now because it's not really a movie I would just go rewatch. It was fun, but it just wasn't what I expected. I expected more from it. For me, I'm not the biggest fan of jukebox musicals. I think that I'm more of a traditional gal. But yeah, that's my review of Valley Girl. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you next week. Bye. Okay, so now it's time for Song of the Week. This week, I kind of wanted to stick with the theme of 80s. So today I'm going to be talking about a band that kind of helped revive the 80s style music, and that is Neon Trees. So Neon Trees released their first album in 2010, and they had a lot of 80s themed songs on there as well. And I felt like that was a little bit before the time that it became popular again. It felt very unique for the time. So the song I'm going to be showing you is one of their newer ones. It's called Used to Like, and it's not their newest song. I haven't really spent a whole lot of time with their brand new song, but this one came out last year, so I'm just going to show you that one. Oh, honey, now you said I'm acting crazy, and you don't see what you see. Get back to what you used to like about me, back to what you used to like about me. So that was, I felt like, still in the theme of 80s style, and that is from their album called I Can Feel You Forgetting Me from 2020, last year. I haven't really delved deep into this album like I want to, but I was really excited when this one came out because they hadn't released anything since 2014, so it was very exciting. But anyways, yeah, so that's Song of the Week for this week. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye. Mm-hmm.